Alright guys, my name is Dinuka. What I'm going to do is take you a step back from what she was talking about, because I think she was going across what a case study is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually give you some theory on what a case study is and some critique on what a case study was supposed to be. Some people say case studies are really worthless, only minority, but there are some strong voices there as well. So we're going to look at what those are, right? Okay, so what is it? Right? Case studies, now this is a definition that has been cited a lot of times, and it's a very famous article, even though this definition has evolved over the past 15-20 years. Essentially, a case study is a method which uses empirical inquiry that investigates contemporary phenomena. What this word means is modern, right now, living phenomena, right? In real life context, which is what you're doing right now, looking at a real life organization, right? So case study research, if you look at it, how you perform it, right? The methodology looks at both qualitative and quantitative methods of doing it, right? So if you want to work with numbers, you can work with numbers, right? If you want to work with narratives, discussions, things like that, you can do that as well, right? The main reason for running a case study, right? The main reason for running a case study usually is trying to get really in-depth information on something, right? In-depth as in information that you might not get from a mere statistical survey or something like that, right? We call it rich information. Sometimes we try to reach information saturation, right? So enough information that it comes to a threshold. Beyond that, any other information is not needed. We can explain what's going on, right? So that's the basic of what a case study is from a theoretical perspective, right? And the question is, what is it good for? Right? And some people say absolutely nothing, right? But as Julie suggested, some prominent universities use case studies a lot, right? And in certain fields, for example, I think certain areas of talent research and things like that, they use a lot of case studies, right? But at the same time, if you go into specific areas in organizational behavior, which is my area, we rarely use case studies. When I started my PhD, my supervisor said, don't even think about it. Right? If you think about that, use that as a cherry on top for your PhD, but never use that as your main case because it's too small. Right? So there is a debate on how you approach this kind of method. Right? But at the same time, there is some controversy around it. So I would be lying to you if I just tell you case studies are great. Right? It is great, but at the same time, you need to know the debate and the controversy around it. Right? And more it's being weeded out because there are more scientific methods of doing it. As you're going to see, I think Alex will show you some methods of actually writing down a case study, or at least the steps of doing it. Okay? So, as I said earlier, we can closely examine an organization or a system, right? A given case, based on, let's say, the context, or we can look at it from critical incidents, like you mentioned, something goes wrong, right? The organization is performing really well, suddenly something changes. A new CEO comes in, someone gets fired, right? And suddenly the performance goes down. Or someone dies in the hospice, right? Or the rate of death or something just increases, right? Then you ask the question, okay, so how do you explain this, right? If you want to explain that, the first question you can ask is, what are the root causes, right? What's the reason for this happening? And to answer that, that's why you start with a case study. So you go into the hospice, let's say, right? You start asking questions, you have a systematic way of looking at the problem. And you work your way up, right? I'm not going to give you the details of how to do it because I think Alex is going to cover that. But essentially, that's what a case study is good for, right? So we use case study to understand a context in a really specific manner. Just to dive in and to make sure we unpack all the little, we call it granularity, right? We try to unpack granularities like sand, right? We try to get the little bits up, right? So usually it's for some geographical area, right? Like what you're doing in Finland, in your country, right? And usually a very limited number of individuals are chosen. That's a limitation of this study. We're going to talk about it. But usually it's very limited in the way we approach the sample, right? In the hospice, we look at just one case and a bunch of people who work there, right? So one of the main criticisms is that people say, you're looking at this organization, but how does that apply to us, right? And that's where the question of generalizability comes from, right? You're saying something great, but we don't care, it doesn't apply to us. That's the main argument that you get for case studies, right? And sometimes you can do longitudinal case studies as well, right? Which means over time. So we're doing one now, we're going to do another one next year, we're going to compare what happens next year with what happened today, right? So if you guys are in the project next year, that's what we're going to look at, right? Okay, so it's a bit boring, I know, but I have to cover this. So there are a few ways of categorizing case studies, right? Now this categorization up here, these three are very famous, right? I'm sure the academics here are probably laughing because it's a bit old, right? But at the same time, this is something that you need to know if you're talking about case studies, right? Whether you exactly agree with this categorization is a different story, right? And here we're going to talk about another one. So the first one is exploratory, right? Which means we're trying to explore something, right? Which opens up doors for further examination, right? We go into a place, have a conversation with someone or a few people, try to explore what's happening. Your business fails, we go into the business, ask a few questions from the people in the business, right? Do some observations, try to find out or try to explore what the problem is. That's what we're trying to do in this kind of approach, right? That kind of category. In a descriptive one, we still do this part, right? But we try to describe what's happening while it's going on, right? So you walk into the organization, something's going on, right? So you start explaining, okay, so I saw this person doing this and this is how this process worked, that kind of, right? So that's a descriptive kind of approach to doing it, right? And usually, we look at, how would I put it? You look at in real time, so when it's happening right now, right? So you're not going to say, you're not going to go in the afternoon, come home and write what happened. You can do that, some people do that, right? But it's best practice if you can have a track record of what's happening right now, right, live. And explanatory, now these words look similar but slight difference, right? Explanatory, look at kind of both of these, right? So it looks at the cosmetic or the surface stuff, right? Surface, the basic descriptors and things like that. But it also goes into the deeper levels, right? So, okay, so this is layer 1, this is layer 2, this is layer 3, that kind of analysis. And this is usually, if you look at the ones that Julie has been talking about, most of these top case studies fall under this category, which looks at both surface and deeper levels, right? Now, one thing that should be said here is that when you talk about how do you look at surface and deeper levels, it differs quite a lot, right? If you look at some of the research here, that's another criticism we're going to talk about. But it's very hard to the replicability, or at least attaching two studies that's going on. It's very hard. I cannot just look at this study and look at a similar study and sometimes come to the same conclusions. Some experts do it really well, but for the general person, it's a problem. So we're going to look at that as well. This category, right? Now this one is from 1997, this one is from 1984. There's a lot more after this. So if you're interested, please feel free to check, but these are the most famous ones, right? Here it's basically looking at interpretive and evaluative, right? It's very simple. Interpretive means developing concepts, right? You see something, you create a model. Does this model explain what I'm saying, right? Evaluative, all you do is you do the same thing, then you pass judgment, right? So you do the model, you evaluate it, and you say, okay, let me think about what I did. Is it right? Is it wrong? Just pass judgment. That's it. So here you develop the concept. That's it. Here you develop it and then judge it. Right? That's another categorization of case study. Right? So this slide, if you want to take a picture, take a picture. But these are the basics of case studies. Right? If you're learning this, you don't have to agree with it, but you need to know it. Right? You need to know the evolution of it. Right?